Welcome to Business Talk Sister Gawk. I'm Becca, and today's podcast episode topic is what is prospecting and how to do it well. And with me today, I have Roger Poka.
Hey fans. Maybe that's why. I was
just because you wanted to say that. Yeah. So Roger was on another episode with me previously for indoor billboards, and Roger has a lot of experience with prospecting. So first of all, what do you do? What's your background experience? If you could explain that.
Okay. Or when did I get into sales? Maybe.
Yeah.
Is that
Okay.
Okay. So my family has had the AMSoil since I was 21.
And what is the AMSoil? Just describe that.
Yeah, we have the AMSoil distributorship in the area. So motor oil,
Okay.
boat oil, 4-wheel oil. So it's an oil product. You think of Pennzoil Mobile. So, yeah, I started selling at age 21, and then the indoor billboards, like we talked about, the outdoor billboards. I've had that. I've got my own podcast, so I sell ads for that. So yeah, I've been doing sales for, well, I don't want to give away my age. It's been a long time. Let's put it that way. Decades.
Okay. Yeah, and you kind of hinted at about describe what exactly is prospecting.
Well, I would say, in my eyes, is, I guess another word for it would kind of be like grazing, like you're kind of, or maybe it's an appetizer. You're feeling things out a little bit, or maybe it's a wine tasting, But to me, prospecting is just, turning over the leaves to see if there's kind of any interest at all.
In what you are selling.
Whatever category
Okay.
you're looking at. And of course, there's many ways to do it. There's all kinds of ways to, quote unquote, touch a prospect. Of course, there's all kinds of digital marketing, emailing, texting. There's, of course, you can pick up the phone. You can walk through the door. Really old style. Well, we all still get them. I mean, I see some there. There's like mailing or quote unquote junk mail. There's all kinds of ways of prospecting. That's for sure. It's instant messaging. I mean, there was things. When I first started, it was phone, face to face, or a letter. That was it. In the 90s, that was really the only way you could prospect and touch someone. But now there's just so many ways.
Yeah, well, and that's kind of my next question is how do you come up with a strategy to start prospecting?
Oh boy, that's a great question. I would say if you're selling something, you're probably passionate about whatever that product or service is. And so if you're pretty engaged mentally, it should come pretty naturally to you as to who, how, and what you're going to prospect, because it's in the background all the time in your mind a little bit, and I think that anyway, this is the way it is for me. Like I said, I don't rarely sit down and make a list, or I guess in the days when I started my indoor company in Montana, what I used to do is I was selling advertising, right, indoor billboards, so I would look in the newspaper, of course, look at outdoor billboards and see who had budget for advertising, like who was interested in advertising. Because not every
they're already in the market.
They're in the game. Yeah.
Yep.
Not
Okay.
everybody advertises, So I would look or listen to the radio, but you'd kind of figure out who might be interested, and like I said, it's always kind of in the background, when I think if you've been in sales for a long time, like I said, you go to lunch and there's someone there and you see them or you talk to them and they say that, whatever it is they say, and it's like, no, there's a prospect. They just said this, for instance, it's like, I should circle back to this person. Or they say, I know Becca, I know so-and-so. I'm like, well, gosh, I've been trying to get in front of Becca. Maybe I can work with this person to get, you know what I mean? So it's not direct prospecting, but if I can get a phone number, or somehow not the wrong words use, but leverage this person to meet the key person, well, then that's prospecting in a way too.
Okay. So, and I think actually you bring up a really good point that I want to kind of come back to, because I think that it's something that a lot of people struggle with is like this feeling of uncomfortability with talking to people in saying, well, I don't want to be salesy or whatever. And so how do you like go about that to just make sure that it's not, or that you have a comfortability with what you're doing, that you don't feel awkward by it or uncomfortable?
Okay, so when you say that, to me, there's two types of uncomfortable: making the prospect feel uncomfortable and also making yourself feel uncomfortable. So I would say, from all of my experiences, if you're going into sales, guaranteed you are going to be uncomfortable for a long time.
You yourself.
Yeah,
You'll
yourself.
always feel weird.
Yeah, you are going, and it takes a long time. When I started, like the AMSO was a lot of face to face, but again, when I was really hammering hard as far as cold calling and walking, it was when I was in Montana, because I dropped down there out of a parachute. I didn't know anybody. So everybody was new to me. So you're going to get sweaty palms. You're going to be nervous. You're not going to feel like doing it. Whatever your nervous twitch is, you're going to be doing it at 8 a.m. in the morning right before you start. But eventually you'll overcome that. But you're going to have that. The young intern I've had in my office, I've told him many times, like, it's going to be uncomfortable. Like, there's no two ways about it. But you get better. Now I've seen it all, that it's just I'm very comfortable in it. It's pretty rare when I'm going to go in front of a prospect that, I get a little pit in my stomach or maybe sweaty palms or whatever. It's pretty darn rare. Now, on the other end, you've also got the prospect. How do you make them not feel uncomfortable? And the normal thing is, you start out, I was like this, no different than anybody. It's kind of where the term comes, verbally vomit. You're so excited, right? Like I said, if you're selling a service or product, you're so excited about it, you get in front of the prospect and you go, and you just like verbally vomit all over them, because you give them 5,000 facts. This is the greatest thing ever. You need to do it. This is why. And they haven't even taken one breath, and you've said 1,000 words. You just verbally vomit all over the person. And that would make the prospect, that will always make the prospect, unless they're really, really good friends with you, probably feel a little uncomfortable. So you just, part of your experience, you learn the pace of delivery. You learn the keys to the delivery. Like I said, I don't want to verbally vomit. I've got a product. There's 8 great things about them, but I'm going to limit, the advantages of this service to just 3 things to this prospect. I'm not going to tell them all 8. I'm going to consolidate it, condense it. And like I said, you just kind of learn that because every salesperson's been rejected many, many, many times, right? And that's what everyone's afraid of, rejection, right? It's a terrible thing. Any which way around it in life, rejection is terrible. And so, you're going to be rejected, but you'll bounce back, and then you'll learn from the rejection is part of the big thing. And then, like I said, you'll learn to hone in and slow down and make yourself feel comfortable. Getting back to the original, you make yourself feel kind of comfortable, and make the prospect feel comfortable.
Yeah. So with that being said, like, what's the biggest differences you see in terms of in person versus over the phone? And are there any like tips you have on doing those things and just like how you approach them?
Okay. Let's start with in person. Remind me to come back to phone. So in person, the nice thing about in person is, as the salesperson, it's a little tougher for them to say no when you're making eye contact, and B, you can read body language. There is a great book out there I read about 10 years ago. I cannot remember the author. It's a female. But I think the title is something of the sort, What Your Prospect is Saying Without Saying Anything at All. Something like that. But it's a book on body language. And I learned a lot from it.
Okay.
And, there's tells, when and like I said, it's been 10 years. I've implemented a lot of this stuff, but there's just a lot of tells. So, that's what I like about the in-person. And then, a key to any sales is relationships. When you walk in, you see someone, especially in small communities where we live, you could run into that person 10 days from now. Oh, hey, how's it going? And then you can start that relationship outside of the sales process. You run into them at Super One, or you run into them at the basketball game, or what, So if you meet them, you know what they look like, you know who they are, where on the phone it would be different. And you were asking about prospecting on the phone. Well, my advice on the phone is kind of that same thing. Your delivery can't be like, hey, this is Poka. I got this Coca-Cola. It's the greatest Coca-Cola. You can't, you got to like, hey, this is who I am. Hope you're having a good day. I wanted to talk to you. I wanted to present to you, or I wanted to show you this, and it's not talking too fast, not acting all excited. It's like I said, I've made all these mistakes. I learned all this stuff the hard way. I had no like quote unquote formal training in sales. I just did it. So I think on the phone you have to have the right
cadence.
There you go,
Yeah.
cadence. I was going to say verbal pace, cadence, the right cadence. Like I said, not too excited, not. And but you got to get to the point because you don't want to waste the prospect's time either. So that would be my advice there.
Yeah. So how do you avoid getting discouraged with like rejection?
Well, that's hard. I think you really have to believe in what you're doing. I think you really have to believe that the prospect or your potential partner in business, whatever, is going to benefit if you use my product or service. You will benefit. You will see the benefits. So you have to believe that because that's what keeps you going. Because, like I said, the rejection is real. And it's terrible. And then the other thing is, you'll hear about people. I mean, you talk to other salespeople, like, gosh, I'm just like in this rut. Like I can't get anything going. Whether it's an athlete, everyone gets in ruts. And you're just kind of boo-hoo and bah-hum, and then, but if you keep grinding, something will happen. And then you get that. Then on the other end, you get that sometimes they call it like a sales high or whatever. Like there's, I've been in, I guess, momentous times when, you're like, whatever, you see 5 prospects, you close 5 deals in a row. It's like, yeah, you just can't be stopped.
And you're like, wow.
Yeah, you just can't be stopped. So it's, it'll happen to everybody eventually both ways.
Yeah.
But the discouraging it, like I said, I think you just have to believe in it, and you have to kind of know going in, that it's gonna be tough, because, I mean, sales is fun and it should be fun, and especially like certain business, like we were talking about the state fair earlier. Like if you're selling the state fair, you should be selling fun, right? I mean, there should be an element of fun to it. So a lot of people would like to be a salesperson if it was fun, but it's not because of the rejection part, and that eliminates whatever percent. You might have the stats. I don't know what percent of the population would say I would never sell, because they're not talkative, or they don't want the rejection, or a combination of all those things. So, but like I said, that's what I love doing. I love prospecting. I love going in, meeting people. It's what I've just done it for so long that I don't know any other way.
Well, and I think too, like the more you do it, the more experience you have in answering people's questions about what you are selling, right?
Oh, for sure.
And then that makes you a lot more comfortable and slow down your pace when people are like, well, what about this? And you're like, oh, yeah, I actually have had experience with that before.
No, that's a really interesting point. Not just what about this as far as the product, but most key people that you're going to present or sell to are sold to every day, right? There's people that every day they're fielding salespeople. And one thing I learned was after I was at it for a while, because they'd ask this question, or they'd put you in an uncomfortable situation. You just want to put your head in the ground. You don't want to be an ostrich. Put your head in a hole and not be there. But as you become polished, you'll always have an answer for those people because you've already seen it. Like just simple ways of maybe trying to get you out of their office, or and sometimes it's a little bit of a test depending upon who they are. And if you pass the test, you'll end up doing business. If you don't, they don't. And I don't have a specific example, but I've been through it where it can, there's 10 seconds of real tenseness, but if you know how to answer it, or how to, and I'm not saying wiggle, I'm saying being on, like, well, this, or I've done this, or then they look at you like, oh gosh, this person's kind of polished. Like, this isn't their first rodeo. Like, I'm not going to be able to just, like, maybe it's not the right word, intimidate, but it can, as a salesperson, you feel intimidated. They might not necessarily be trying to intimidate you, but once you get a little bit better, and I don't know how I think that if you have any tips, if you're going to ask me tips and strategies on how to do that, I think it's just experience, but you'll get comfortable and you'll kind of have an answer for every question or every situation, and then you're respected. They may say no, but they're going to be like, well, this, I respect this person. They've been through it. And like I said,
They know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
They're available for questions if I really actually did need their help.
There you go. Yeah. So it's a polishing process.
Yeah, totally. So are there any like prospecting tools that you think are helpful or resources that you've learned about that have been just good in general for you?
Well, I think, like I said, getting back to kind of before, just always having your radar up is the key thing. Like I said, I've done a lot of ad sales. Well, let's just stick to the ad sales. Like I said, who is advertising? Who's got budget? Who's new to town? And reasons for advertising. Whatever. Let's say a business, they expand or they're bringing on a new line or something like that. It's just a reason, or they're hiring. That XYZ company is they're doing an addition, and by October 1st they're supposed to hire 100 more employees. Well, you probably want to get in front of them in like July and be like, hey, I heard you're going to hire 100 more employees. How are you going to find them? You thought about how you going to try and reach these prospective employees? So if you always have that radar on, but like I said, for my advertising business, like I said, I looked at the newspaper. I looked at all the little like the free publications, that were around town. And like I said, I looked at outdoor billboards, people on the radio, people at the hockey rink on the boards, like who's advertising. So depending upon what you're doing, there's if your radar's up, there's plenty of resources to find prospects.
Yeah. So is there a really big difference between prospecting a business versus an individual?
For sure, because like I said, the business the person at the business that you're prospecting is seeing people like you all day, every day. Typically, they're you come through the door. I'm looking for the person in charge of whatever, and it's like, oh, that's Bill.
I always
you gotta go see Bill. Yeah.
I always hide. It's not me. It's somebody else.
That'd be Bill. Whereas an individual, they might not have ever been approached about something, you know what I mean? Except for the kid knocking on the door saying, hey, I'm selling a raffle ticket or my school fundraiser. Other than that, they have, may have never been solicited. So there's a big difference.
Yeah, totally. Okay. And do you have any tips on either one of those situations? I guess maybe we've covered a little bit of like the experience side of things with the business, but like individuals, is there anything you think would be good for people to know?
As far as an individual wanting to become a salesperson?
Approaching individuals.
Oh, approaching an individual.
Like consumers, yeah.
Oh, boy. See, I guess that's where I would be a little weaker because I've never really done that.
Okay.
I've done more, going to businesses and commercial stuff. So, but like, yeah, if you're selling something on the internet or something, then you're trying to find is that what you're talking? You're trying to find the
Either
consumer.
way, I would argue that that's not true about personal or consumer sales because I just ate lunch with you and you said hi to 5 people on the way in. So I think you know how to talk to individual people.
Yeah. I could talk to them, but but I know all those people. But like I said, as far as approaching an individual would be, I don't know. I guess I don't know. I'm stumped. I don't know.
Okay.
As far as sales, like I said, I'm just so used to like coming into a room and someone's at their desk or, and then it's like, hey, I'm Poka, you have a minute or, whatever it may be, that kind of thing.
Okay.
So.
Well, and I would guess from an individual perspective, like, I guess my experiences have been more along the lines of like being okay. Like if you have a good product and you're like, this is what it is. And whatever people ask you about it, if you're like in person, like selling whatever, you don't feel bad if people say no, because it's like, oh, well, I know it's good. And if you don't see the value in it, that's okay,
Right, totally. Yeah.
And yeah, so I think there's like some truth to that, but then also too, like, yeah, the whole cold calling aspect is, I think I should do another episode on that sometime because
it's very hard. Yeah. I mean, cold calling is very hard. And the thing is, if any of you are looking to get into sales, what I've learned more recently is as I'm getting closer to 50 is, I started in my 20s, like everyone I was prospecting was of course older than me. And it's just been the last couple of years that I've started to notice, I start seeing key people, and they're younger than me, and it's like I said, I've just realized it over the last 2-3 years, and sometimes they feel a little bit of an experience of maybe what they're doing, and then they'll kind of turn the table and say, "What do you think?" Asking me what I think. Where when I was 26, 28, 30, the people weren't turning around saying, "Well, what do you think?" They were telling me what they thought. They were 50, 55, 60. They weren't looking for a 28-year-old's advice. So if you're out there and you're 35 or 40, hang in there, because the tables are going to kind of turn at some point, and like I said, all of a sudden you're going to be the quote unquote old person, and with the old person comes wit and wisdom and experience. So it'll be good for you.
Yeah. So I just have one more question before we jump into like the GOC. Well, actually, I want to know how people can find you, but we'll do that in a second. So do you have any way that you keep track of people that you've connected with, or what you've talked about, to make sure you don't mix them up with somebody else or anything like that? Is there any advice you have on that?
Oh, for sure. So what I used to do when I was doing my indoor company, I had the big business card Rolodex. Do you remember? You ever seen those on the deck? And so I literally got the business card. So on the back, that's when you take notes. Okay, on May of 2023, I called Becca. We talked about this. And sometimes what you want to do is, I just found out when we were on the phone, Becca said she's pregnant, and you make a little note of that, okay? Then you're prospecting, and you come across a business card like, 6 months later. Well, I'm going to call Becca because she said check in 6 months. So checking with Becca. Hey, by the way, Becca, did you have your baby? How's everything going? And then Becca's like, that's a stranger. How can a stranger remember? So I always,
keep those notes.
Took some, especially when, so you're not overly contacting somebody, but there's plenty of room on the back of a business card. Everyone's business card to take some notes on them. And then, but even more recently, now I'm moving around so much. I got a notebook in my car, and I've always got notes. Like and then the second contact and the third contact, and what did we talk about, and and sometimes you crop some off the list. Just like they're great people that want to talk to you, but they just aren't interested. They don't know how to tell you no. So, but then, you just, take some notes. I mean, I don't have like a high tech way of tracking stuff. I just, like I said, I've got a notebook now where I'm just, I'm thumbing through it daily, basically. So, names, situation, all of a sudden, as you're flipping through, you see this name like, whoa, Alan. I haven't talked to Alan in a while. Oh yeah, gosh, I haven't talked to you. Last time I contacted him was November of 2023. I should, maybe reach out again, and then look at the notes, and maybe they said don't come back for a year, but if they said, check back, our budget's full right now, we'll have a new budget next year, well then maybe it's time to check in, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay. So how can people find you?
Well, that's a good question. Well, Roger Poka on Facebook, Roger Poka on Instagram. I've also got a podcast, which can be found. Well, the podcast is Tea with Miss McGill, and we got all the stuff there as far as contacting.
And what's the topic on Tea with Miss McGill?
That's our hockey podcast, high school hockey.
Okay.
Based in northern Minnesota. And then actually, I'm involved with the racing one, but I'm just not behind the mic as much as I'd like to be. Just a time thing. So, but so Roger Poka on Facebook, Roger Poka on Instagram, Roger Poka on YouTube. So check all those places out. Like, subscribe.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, we're going to transition to the GOC portion of this episode. And I'm going to tell you a story. So, if you have not heard about the hail that we just had.
Yes.
We had some pretty significant hail up here in northern Minnesota recently. So, we had some pieces were actually as big as a softball.
Yes.
And I was out in the middle of it when
you were?
Yeah, we were driving and
oh my gosh.
Well, okay, this is terrible, but my husband saw a piece hit the ground and I thought for sure it was like a piece of sheetrock that fell off of somebody's truck. And I'm like, "No, that's just sheetrock. It's fine." No, it was a piece of ice. And then we kept driving and all of a sudden it just started coming down, really down. And then we had to get underneath a tree kind of with the car to try to like avoid some of the hits.
Yeah, protected.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So anyway, side tangent to that. But we ended up getting home And it was pretty intense. I mean, most of them were around the size of a golf ball, somewhere in there. And so the next day, it's like the storm chasing roofing contractors just descended. And so I actually just had probably like 5 sales pitches in one evening to me at my house. And so that like first, the prospecting aspect of like, oh, like, would you like us to do a roof inspection and all this stuff? Like at first my son was like, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to tell them that I'm the homeowner. And I was like, okay, you go ahead and try that, buddy.
Do it, buddy.
And he tried the first time. He's like, I choked. You got to come out here and talk to this guy. And I'm like, okay. So I went out there, but it was actually really, for me, I enjoyed it because I was like, okay, tell me about what you do.
Yeah.
How many years are you in business? And like on the flip side of things, I always love learning from other people's sales tactics.
Sure.
So I like being pitched to.
Yeah.
If it's like in person or whatever, just because then I can like learn about everything and see how they did it and like what their like value points were, and just because I'm like, okay, now I know all about this industry and like what someone would do. And so I would just say too, like if this is your, I guess the gawk, but also a learning moment, but like if anyone is interested in prospecting and you've never done it before, a good thing to do even before getting into an industry is to go and get pitched to by other people.
There you go.
Just to see like how they're doing it and what they're saying, because you will hear things that you never even thought were a part of the industry. Like just certain things that I heard just talking to people the other day were like, yeah, if you have hail that's over 3/4 inch big, that's like an automatic shoe in the door for an entire roof replacement from your insurance policy. And I was like, 3/4 inch? Okay, that's the standard. And I didn't know that.
Sure.
So just different things like that of like tips and tricks that like other people are using in their pitches, you could apply to your own.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. So
I like that. Take a note on that, all of you out there.
Anyways, well, Roger, thanks for being with me today.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, this is great. Let's do it again.
And if you enjoyed this episode, you should give it a review on wherever you are listening, and I will see you next time.